Good evening, I'm Bill Mulholland, and welcome to Good Sports, Pawtucket's cable sports show since 1992. Tonight, we present the life and times of Pawtucket native and Rhode Island long-distance high school coaching legend, Jim Doyle. Jim's coaching career has spanned 30 years, with 10 years at St. Raphael Academy, beginning in 1984, and at Bishop Hendrigan from 1994 through the Hawks' 2013 cross-country season. During that time, his teams have captured 53 state championships in cross-country, indoor and outdoor track, and in 1989, his Saints distance medley team, consisting of Andrew and Neil Butler, Joe Kavanaugh, and Chris McGill, upset the highly touted Jamaicans in the Penn Relays to win the Championship of America. Welcome back to Good Sports, Jim.
Thank you, Bill.
Good to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Now, Jim, your younger brother Bobby had a much heralded long-distance running career. You have an interesting story how it all began for Bobby.
Well, Bobby had no interest in running. He was, like all of us back then, a baseball player, basketball, hockey. He loved those sports. Went out for anything that he could make and played hockey, at 5 o'clock in the morning just so that he could be on the team. In the spring season of his junior year, he was playing baseball, and on the baseball team, all he was a warm-up catcher for future Red Sox pitcher Ray Jarvis, and catching, warming him up for his sessions, whether for a game or just warming him up during the time because he threw so hard nobody else would catch him.
Yeah, this is at Hope High.
This was at Hope High School.
Okay.
And one day he was in a biology class with a track coach, got detention. His punishment after school was to run a mile with the other teammates on the track team. And what happened is that he beat everybody on the track team. So Ted McLaughlin walked over to Paul Donovan, the baseball coach, and said to him, "Hey, that little redheaded guy, do you really need him catching?" And explained to him, how fast he'd run the mile in. And Paul released him, and that's how Bobby's career began in running.
The rest is history,
The
right?
rest is history, exactly.
Excellent story. Now, Jim, you were introduced to long-distance running at age 25, a little progressed than Bobby was. Who had the biggest impact on your development as a runner and also later as a coach?
Well, obviously Bobby. It was
your younger brother?
Yes, my younger brother Bobby was, certainly had an impact on what I did. As a runner in the beginning, he gave me workout schedules. I followed, his programs based on his consistency in training and
this is
his
you
long
right
runs.
here, running in one of the races?
That is me running in probably the Woonsocket Autumn Fest, one of my better, I believe they still have it. That was one of my better races in a 10K race. I had a great race that day.
Yeah, and you were talking about Bobby, the impact he had?
Well, it was his work ethic that, and his accomplishments. I was so proud of everything that he was accomplishing. Even at that young age, he had been on the 1969 NCAA championship team at Texas El Paso. He had already started running marathons and was a very successful marathon runner. And, I admired him greatly. And he got everybody that he met. He wanted them to be a distance runner. All of his friends became distance runners. And I can even remember the guy that serviced our oil burner at Doyle Sporting Goods. He was a skinny guy, so he convinced him to be a distance runner, and that guy became a distance runner. So I said, hey, it's high time that I get into the sport.
Okay.
And he convinced me to do it.
Yeah, and then Jim, from 1980 to 1985, you ran 9 marathons, culminating with a time of 2:43 in the Ocean State Marathon. What training methods did you use that you later incorporated into your coaching philosophy?
Well, the most important things was, doing your long run. A long run, for the most part was pretty much what Bobby believed in. For a long run, for a marathon, I was running 22 miles.
In a day?
In a day. That was practicing for a long run. You would do it once, probably over a week, over a 12-week period. The other part was, to be consistent with your training. Bobby's, always told me to be consistent. Get out there every day. I would have these long running streaks, sometimes as long as 5 years. And in time, I became a stronger and stronger runner because of of Bobby's philosophy, which was strength equals speed. The stronger you are, the faster you're going to be. So, and that's been my coaching philosophy and my own running philosophy at the time, and I've carried it through in just about everything that I do.
Yeah, and it worked for Bobby, and it certainly has worked for you for the last 30 years. In fact, 2013 marked your 30th year of coaching high school athletes and long-distance runners. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Now, you began your coaching career at St. Raphael Academy with the 1984 cross-country season. Now, what made you go over and change from your running career to coaching high school athletes, Jim?
Well, during the summer of that year, a friend of mine who was also a road racer, Bruce Gamache, told me that St. Raphael was in desperate need of a coach in August, and the season was going to start in a month. And I said, he convinced me to do it, and I was glad he did, because it became certainly the passion of my life. They handed me a postcard with 4 or 5 names on it.
That was it?
That was it. And
of prospective runners?
Prospective runners, and running was unheard of at St. Raphael. They hadn't won a championship in 20 years there. So I had some convincing to do, and I gradually did. I convinced some young men to come out, and we built the first team, and I think that first year we won only 1 dual meet. But I made everybody feel pretty special about their accomplishments, and I told them, I always said, listen, if you work hard, we can get better at this. And sure enough, the next year we won a couple more meets, and then by 1986 we were undefeated during our dual meet season and never lost another dual meet during the remaining 8 years that I was at St. Raphael Academy.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. Now, Jim, you, in my opinion, you are the high school coaching long-distance icon in the state of Rhode Island, with, again, as we said at the very start, 53 state championships, over 100 division pennants. I think you got another one, class division, this past Saturday. And your teams captured a remarkable 18 consecutive state indoor state championships from 1994 through 2011. So you talked about your coaching philosophy, but I want you to go in depth about your coaching philosophy at St. Raphael's and what you did to nurture the runners, both boys and girls, because your wife Debbie joined you on the staff.
Right. In 1986, there was no girls program at St. Raphael, and so I kind of hired Debbie, of course, no pay at all, to take over the girls program, and she did an outstanding job. She would use my workouts, and in essence, they were Bobby's workouts, and we had the same philosophy. Just we told the kids, this is a sport where everybody would compete. Nobody sits on the bench. We made it fun. We created a lot of enthusiasm. I started to take them on trips that they had never gone to the bigger meets. We gave them plenty of exposure. We would go to the Manhattan Invitational.
Yeah, so what was your reasoning on that? Because that was really revolutionary back then. No one was doing that.
Yeah, nobody was doing it. It made them feel pretty special about themselves, and that they could compete with out-of-state teams. They could compete against out-of-state athletes, and they wanted to do that. And the more we did that, other kids started to believe, and the program grew to at one point where 20% of the student body at St. Raphael Academy was now competing.
No way.
Yes.
Which was what, you had about 500 at that point in time?
It was 500 kids who were, we were written up in one of the high school running magazines as one of the larger programs. We had 100 kids between the boys and girls programs. And the boys loved it because now the girls were competing. And I can always remember Chris Milton saying, oh, those girls will never win a state championship. And sure enough, they came around and they won their first state championship and went on to win 3 additional state championships. It was very, very successful years with Debbie at the helm there.
Yeah, and you nurtured a love of the sport during that time, and you had a unique Sunday ritual that you would have during the season, Jim,
right.
You and Debbie did.
We would certainly clog my street on Maynard Avenue in Seekonk. We would have the kids over.
All 100 of them?
Just about all 100 would show up. Their parents would drop them off, and we'd send them. It was a great way of luring them into doing a 10-mile long run. They would go out, and as soon as the first ones got back, they were assigned to cook pancakes in my kitchen. And I have so many stories to tell, but everybody would be lined up when they came back from the runs, and they'd have a pancake breakfast for everybody every Sunday morning. And they were like our extended family. We really loved being with them. It was really special, and they loved being there. They looked forward to doing it every week.
Another team building type of atmosphere
right? It was a team building type of atmosphere, sure.
Yeah. Now, Jim, in the fall of 1986, your St. Raphael Academy coaching career changed with the Butler twins, Andrew and Neil, when they came out to compete in cross country. What did you see in the Butlers that convinced you of their running talents?
Well, when you looked at them, they were small, and they were obviously very thin kids. You know,
Well, in fact, we have a picture right here of them.
Yes.
Right.
And could you tell the difference between Andrew and Neil, because they were
right.
identical?
Well, they were identical twins. Andrew was leading in this particular case, and that usually was the way the scenario played out. Andrew and then Neil's behind him. And toward the end of the career, Neil won some key races over Andrew, and came into his own. But Andrew usually led. But in this particular case, Andrew was leading here.
Okay.
But they were small.
Yeah. And you had a funny story, though, about an indoor track meet that you went to.
Yeah, we were competing with the Brown Invitational, and I can remember we were in a DMR, and in the DMR, the lead athlete is a 1,200-meter runner, and the anchor
DMR is distance medley relay.
Distance medley relay. And so the lead runner was the 1,200, which was going to be Neil Butler, and the anchor, of course, was going to be Andrew Butler. So we competed in that relay. We ended up winning it. I believe they were both sophomores, and then one of the opposing coaches from New York came running over, protesting afterwards, saying, "You can't use, a single athlete in both races." And I had to explain to them, and I said, he looked at me and said, "You got to be kidding me!"
Double, right?
And he was. There they were, the Butler twins. But they were amazing. And,
That's a great story. And so you were saying they were small. So what did you see in their talent, too?
Well, they were small. They both wanted to be basketball players, and I just thought that they weren't really big enough to be basketball players. They had great speed. They certainly thought they were sprinters. I convinced them otherwise. I initially moved them to the quarter, then to the, to the 800, and then eventually up to the 1500. They had missed their freshman year in cross country, and they came out for outdoor track, and sure enough, they found instant success running the 1500. And as they went along that season, they became more and more successful, and had a lot of talent. It was tough instilling the work ethic into them. I can remember many times going over to their house on Pleasant Street, knocking on Mrs. Butler's door, and she would point like this, "They're in there, Mr. Doyle, go in and get them." And they were in their bed, and I'd go in there and say, "Hey, okay, guys, let's go." And and they'd go, "Mr. Doyle, you can't do that. You can't do this." I said, "Here I am. I'm doing it." So I would drag them out of bed and get them up there to do their long runs on Sundays. So.
Interesting. Now, Jim, the 1987 cross-country season brought you your first of 53 state championships, led by sophomores Juan Vargas and Chris McGill, juniors Andrew and Neil Butler, and senior Sean Millington. What made that quintet so successful?
They were very talented, obviously. Having the Butler brothers on there. Chris McGill was a real talent in cross country. Chris later went on, to become a Foot Locker finalist. The other guys, I always tell guys that we coach that if we have a bunch of guys, and we would typically have 40 or 50 guys, that the 50th guy pushes the 49th guy, and the 49th pushes the 48th, and we get it all the way up to number 1. And these guys believed in that philosophy. They bought it, heart and soul, and they dedicated themselves and they committed themselves. This is a school that hadn't won a state championship in cross country in over 20 years. They really wanted to prove to themselves that they could do it. And they were a special bunch of young men that were very dedicated that summer and committed themselves to winning that state championship. Ironically, we were tied and in that 87 championship with OLP, but the team that had the first 6 men across the line wins the state championship, and fortunately we had the first 6 because of our depth, because those guys believed in each other, and it wasn't close. Our 6th man was in way before, just right after their 5th man, and we went on to win it.
Yeah, now, Jim, you followed up your 1987 cross-country season in 1988 by scoring a combined 18 points in the state meet, the lowest since LaSalle ran a perfect 15 in 1947, with your top 5 Harriers, Andrew and Neil Butler, Chris McGill, Juan Vargas, and Chris Millington, the younger brother of Sean, all earning first-team All-State accolades. Talk about that team.
That was probably, certainly one of the greatest teams that I had ever coached. Later in my career at Henrican, we had 5 All-Staters, but we never had a score as low as that. That was a couple of those guys, Chris McGill, probably Juan Vargas. Any one of those guys, if the Butlers weren't there, probably could have won the individual state crown that year. They were so good. and everywhere that that this crew went, they set records. They were just talented young men that again worked very hard throughout the year, set their goal. We even set a goal of winning the New England championships, and there was a team that was very powerful at the time out of Connecticut. That was Xavier Brothers, and the New Englands were in Vermont. We lost that year, I believe, 52-54. Usually you win a New England championship with a score of 170 or so, and both teams were so outstanding. It was close. We lost. We were second. A few previous years we were seconds, and we had some seconds and thirds in the New England championships. These guys, I've never seen any performance like that in cross country. A few years ago, in 2009, we went to the national championship with Hendricken out in Oregon, and that's the closest it's ever come to being such a great team.
Yeah. Now, Jim, in your 10-year career as a St. Raphael track coach, you and your wife Debbie had state championships in 5 boys cross country, 4 girls cross country, 3 indoor, and 1 New England boys cross country title. But your most cherished team accomplishment was the 1989 distance medley team at the Penn Relays that captured the Championship of America. Describe for our Good Sports audience that race and who participated in it. We got a wonderful picture also.
Okay. Yeah. Again, it was the guys that were on the team were obviously Andrew and Neil Butler.
Okay, we've got that. So left to right, who do we see here?
Okay, you can see Chris McGill.
Yeah, and he ran what?
Chris was our 800 runner.
Okay.
And then I believe the next shot is of, I believe that's Neil. I can't tell from here. I usually have to get close so I can see that little dimple, but that might be Andrew and then Neil Butler. That is Andrew and then Neil Butler and then Joe Kavanaugh.
Okay.
And Chris McGill was running the 800 for us. Neil Butler led off the race and ran the 1200. He ran an unbelievable race, 60, 60, 60 for a 3-minute flat.
Now this just wasn't just the American high schools. There were other countries.
There were other countries. The Jamaican teams had, continuously won this award, the Championship of America, year after year. So
here comes Little Rhode Island, unknown, right?
Unknown, virtually unknown. I had told these guys it wasn't, this might be an opportunity for them to win, and they believed in themselves. And of course, when Neil led off with the sparkling 1200, we said, we were all excited, we're right up there in first place. Joe Kavanaugh got the baton, and Joe was a great 400-meter runner, He didn't run that great that day, ran a 53. He was capable of running 51s, but he didn't. But, the Jamaican teams and some of the other teams ran probably 47 seconds. So that threw us 6 seconds behind. Chris McGill was still an upcoming distance runner and was still physically immature, ran a 2:03 half. Probably the other teams ran a 1:56, so another 7 or 8 seconds. So by the time Andrew Butler got the baton, we were over 100 meters behind. We were on one side of the track, the field was on the other side of the track, and we had 4 laps, and that's an awful big distance to make up.
Impossible.
It was truly impossible but knowing Andrew Butler, we got the right situation that it became a tactical race up front with the leaders of the race, and nobody wanted to make a move. Well, Andrew Butler was moving and gradually closing the gap.
Yeah, what was he running for clips?
He was probably running off like 60s and 61s, quarters, at the time.
This little guy, right? Unknown little guy making up everything.
And nobody knows he's coming.
Yeah.
And except the crowd is starting to get into it now. And there's 40,000 people there at the Penn Relays.
Yeah.
And they can see that he's gradually increasing. So that we come to the last lap, he finally catches the field with 1 lap to go. And all of a sudden everybody kind of wakes up and they kind of sprint. They go around the first turn, and all of a sudden, Andrew takes off on the back stretch. One of the Jamaican teams tries to go with him, but with 200 meters to go, Andrew just puts on this amazing kick, runs a 4:10 mile.
Oh, really?
And we end up winning the Championship of American award with a combined time, I believe at the time was 10 minutes and 12 seconds. So it was an unbelievable performance. We were given this huge round wooden plaque that was probably bigger than them for our award. It still hangs at St. Raphael Academy. It was.
And it had to be electric, right?
It was completely something that we, to this day I'm so proud of that accomplishment.
And rightfully so. Now, Jim, the 1992 cross-country season marked the first time in Saints history that both the boys and girls teams won state championship titles, with juniors Keith Woodman and Hassan Hanet and first season senior Jason Pereira notching all-state honors. Talk about that season.
Well, that was a special team. In 1991, we again had finished second in the New England's to New Britain High School, and our goal was to win the New England Championships. We had a lot of guys coming back. Sean Nassini was on that team. Sean was one of the captains. Eric Williams was on the team. Steve Cooney from Central Falls was on the team. We had a bunch of kids that hadn't had that much running experience, but they were very dedicated people. And I know I'm missing some names, but they were a bunch of good kids. In the initial part of the season, we went to Vermont because that's where the New England was going to be held. And there was an invitational there, and the guys were going to go on the course that the New Englands were at. And what happened was that we went there, we finished second. Well, we were supposed to win. So, and the reason why we finished second, I found out, is that some of the kids stayed up, including Keith Woodman, and played all night long. So as a lesson on the way back, I had this little trophy that they presented, a little small thing, for finishing second. So we stopped over in the White River Junction. I said, listen, had we won this would be one thing, but this is something we really don't deserve, this second place trophy. So I get out of the car, I threw it into the White River, and the kid said, what'd you do that for? I said, because the next time we come here, we're going to win. And sure enough, when we went back there, and we came back, and they were way more focused, and they came back, and they won that New England Championship. But it was a lesson that they learned, and later on, I did that with all my teams that went up there. If they finished second, I would throw it in the White River. And a funny story, one time I was doing a coaching clinic, and a coach from Connecticut raised his hand and said, can I ask you a question? Do you really throw second place trophies, in the river? And I said, yeah, I do.
And Jim, real quick, you have
Sean Nassini,
yeah.
On my right in that picture, and that's Hassan Hanet.
Yeah, and Sean tragically died in 9/11, right?
He did die in 9/11 tragically, and was a great team captain, a great motivator, a tremendous personality, and I miss him dearly. He was someone that was very special to the St. Raphael Academy team with all 4 years that he was on the program.
Yeah. And so you're talking about the coach had said something about that?
Yeah, about trophies. We were talking about it. Yeah, ironically, one year one of the kids said to me, Coach, you're throwing these into the White River. Supposing the piece of marble hits somebody, on the head. And I said, that's a good point. So I stopped doing it for a while. And so when the coach asked me the question, I said, you went underneath the bridge and got hit by one of those trophies, were you? So it was funny, and it was a good motivating thing for those kids to learn that, if work hard, and you can come away with a big important win.
Now, Jim, you left St. Raphael Academy after the 1994 outdoor track season, and then took the reins at Bishop Hendrick. You've been there for the last 20 years. Why did you leave St. Raphael Academy after all that tremendous success that you had?
The person that hired me, Don Kavanaugh, was the assistant principal and the athletic director. He was a great person to work for. Brother William Kemmerer was the principal. Both of them had left, and really the philosophy of the school had changed somewhat, and it wasn't a philosophy that I had agreed with, and so I just decided that it was time for me to go. I hated to leave. I really loved coaching the kids at St. Raphael Academy, but it was an important decision, and obviously it was the right decision for me to do. So.
Yeah. Now, Jim, your brother Bobby, a legendary long-distance runner, passed away in December of 2007. What's the Doyle family doing to keep his memory alive?
Well, after a few weeks of his passing, a bunch of his friends and family members got together and decided, these are all people that Bobby had competed against, but Bobby had inspired throughout his life. We got together and we formed the Bobby Doyle Foundation, and we decided to have a road race every August in his honor, the Bobby Doyle Classic, which is a 5K and a 5-mile road race. And what we have done is we've taken the proceeds from that event, and we've given scholarships to a male and female high school distance runner, a senior runner, every year. It's generally between $1,500 and $2,000 scholarship to the outstanding runner of the year. There's essays involved, and those people are chosen on their academic success and their running success. We've also given grants to youth running programs and to high school programs. We've purchased uniforms. We've helped high schools start up, track programs to reinstate them if they've had budget problems. We've also worked with the United States Marine Corps in the Toys for Tots programs at the indoor meets, collecting toys and bringing those toys over to Crossroads, Rhode Island. We've done so many great things. There was an athlete from Lincoln High School that lost his legs in the war. We decided to help out, make a donation to him getting, some help with that, and that was very successful. And last year there was an athlete that was involved in a terrible automobile crash in North Kingstown. We decided to help that family, who was a track athlete. So Bobby would be really proud of the accomplishments that what we've done. We've given out over $50,000 in scholarships.
Really? In a short period of time?
In a short period of time, scholarships and grants. It's been very successful.
Yeah, wonderful. That's a great way to keep Bobby's memory alive,
Right.
for sure.
And I know that, he always said that he wanted to give back to the sport and he wanted to help.
Because after his running career, he actually went into coaching.
He went into
like
coaching,
his older brother.
Right, like me, and was actually very successful. He had coached a state championship team in 1996 at Woonsocket High School. Very successful coaching.
Yeah. Now, Jim, you have now logged the last 20 years at Hendricken as the Hawks cross-country, indoor, and outdoor track coach. Who's your stud harrier this year on the Hawks team?
Well, obviously, it's a young man named Colin Turney. Colin is, just another one of amazing athletes that I've coached, who loves the sport, who's very dedicated and committed into the sport. And he's worked hard, and he's a person that, started, from the bottom, has worked his way up. He wasn't looking for instant success. He knew what it would take, the hard work ethic, to be successful. And this year he's been successful. This past weekend he won the Class A championship running 15:32, the fourth fastest time ever in the history of the course at Pontiganset for Rhode Island boys. Week before, a couple weeks ago, he won the Manhattan Invitational in 12:32, and he's become quite the runner.
Yeah, another long line of great Hawk long-distance runners
Yes.
under Coach Jim Doyle. Now, Jim, remarkably, we've got 1 minute left in the show. What words of wisdom do you have for young, aspiring long-distance runners?
I would say for the young athletes to stay with the sports that they're doing, at 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. Get involved in maybe some middle school cross country. See how you like the sport, and then when you get to high school, just remember that it's a big fishbowl there. That if you try out for one of the major sports, you might not make it, and if you don't make it, give cross country and track a try. It's a sport where nobody really sits on the bench. Everybody always has a chance to compete.
No one's cut, right?
Nobody gets cut, and there's always a chance to compete. So.
Yeah. Well, great. Now, Jim, thank you for sharing your insights into your storied coaching career. You certainly have impacted thousands of runners, both young and old, in the state of Rhode Island, and it's always good to see a Pawtucket native make it big time, as you certainly have there, Jim, and continue to do also.
Okay.
On the next
Thank
Good
you,
Sports, we're going to go over and feature Stacy Vinagro, who is just competing right, in fact, this weekend in Las Vegas on a fitness program, and she'll be back to go over and talk about that. So I'm Bill Mulholland for Good Sports. Good night.